my name's Caroline Stocks, Managing Editor of Pig Health Today, and with me is Michael Pearden, who's a veterinarian at 4-Star Veterinary Service in Pennsylvania. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're talking about sow lameness today, and it's an issue that can be frustrating as well as expensive for producers. How severe is the challenge, the lameness challenge in the US?
It's substantial. I mean, lameness in sows is the largest driver of involuntary removals from breeding herds on most farms that we encounter.
And why is that? What causes it?
When a sow develops lameness that's severe enough that she is no longer able to effectively get to the feeder or to effectively compete within the social hierarchy, she can't survive within the herd anymore, and she'll need to be removed regardless of her age or production history or stage of gestation. And so those involuntary removals are really damaging financially to the sow herds.
And what actually causes lameness problems in herds?
Much of the lameness that results in removals of the animals comes from injuries to the lower limb, to the hoof and foot that go undiagnosed and unnoticed by farm staff because the pigs are pretty good at hiding those early injuries and aren't necessarily dramatically impacted by them. But those injuries can become infected, and the infection festers and becomes more severe over time, and eventually gets to a place where it begins causing significant damage within the joints or to the bones of the foot. Once the damage progresses to that point, the animals aren't really recoverable anymore. Medically, we're just not able to manage them back to health at that point.
So how is the shift from or towards rather group housing, how is that impacting the severity of cases that you're seeing?
Lameness has really risen in importance as we've begun to house sows more often in group housing situations. And that's because an animal, she needs to be able to move and move effectively and without pain to be able to compete and thrive in a group environment. An animal living in a stall, she can use the stall to help her get up. Her feed's right there in front of her. She doesn't necessarily need to compete with other animals for access to the feeder station. And so she's better able to manage lameness or to live with lameness on her own in a stall environment, whereas in a pen environment makes it difficult for her to continue her day-to-day life when she struggles to get around. Apart from that, the movement into pen housing has given more opportunities for the animals to injure themselves and begin this lameness process because the animals move around more, so there's more opportunity just for locomotion injuries. They're also subject to fighting, which can lead to a lot of injuries, and that increased mobility and the ability to get around just increases the odds that she gets an injury that ends up leading to a progressive lameness issue.
So can you talk me through the detail a little bit more? How do things like body weight and body condition affect lameness?
Animals that are over heavy are at increased risk for breakage or for strains and pulls that can happen. Nutrition has a really important role to play in preventing or reducing the severity of lameness problems by making sure that an animal has a good sound musculoskeletal system, which bone density is part of that, tendon development, and also good hoof integrity.
How do you actually go about solving the problem and indeed treating lameness issues in herds?
Close observation and aggressive proactive treatment of animals that demonstrate signs of early lameness disease. The key is that we need to encourage farm workers to identify these animals much earlier in the course of the disease. As I said earlier, by the time an animal is unwilling to put weight on a leg, our odds of clinically resolving that are very low. We need to identify animals when they have a gait abnormality, they're not walking quite smoothly, and aggressive antibiotic treatment strategies can have some success in resolving those issues before they develop to that level of severity.
Is there a specific foot structure that perhaps copes better in these cases where lameness could occur? Is there something that perhaps producers could be thinking about genetically?
I think focus from the genetics companies on female retention and longevity within herds, especially within pen gestation herds, will naturally drive them to building more robust structure back into the breeding stock. Animals with heavier bones, with bigger feet, will likely do better as far as lameness goes. But now we really need help from our genetic partners on selecting for traits that ensure soundness and survivability in these housing systems.
Now, you mentioned the importance of early detection and producers becoming more aware of the issues. Have you worked with any clients who've been able to turn a situation around, or have identified things early and revamped their or solved a lot of their lameness problems?
Yeah, nobody solves a lameness problem, I would say, meaning it's a problem that's going to exist when you're raising animals. It's not just a pig problem. Lameness exists in all animals. And so really the key is managing it and helping farms feel like they do have some power over that problem, and to give them some successes in the management of that issue. Once they understand it, to really look for those early lame animals. They do begin to have more treatment success. I'd say I've also seen positive improvements in farms with high levels of lameness, where there were facility issues that were really impacting that, whether slat gaps were too wide, or there were hardware issues that, there were sharp edges sticking up out of the floor, or the feeder faced the wrong direction, or, things like that can be causing injuries repeatedly. And what we've learned with pen gestation is that a narrower gap between the slats is preferable. Something that's narrow enough that it's hard for the sow to get her toes stuck down in between the slats when she's moving around or fighting, which can result in some cracking or tearing of the hoof. And so that's been the biggest probably learning point, or as we've moved to pen gestation barns, is that barns that were built to be stalled barns often had a pretty wide gap, 1.5 inch gap or something, and those slat gaps just don't work very well when sows are moving loose.
So what do you think is going to kind of make the biggest step in terms of improving lameness? Do you think it is going to be investment in new facilities, or making changes to existing facilities, or do you think it's one of the other elements?
It's going to be a combination. To me, the biggest drivers will be facility design and genetic improvement, refocusing on structure and durability on the genetic side, but also continuing to experiment and study facility design to find design options that really reduce the risk of injury to the animals.